session, so the only notes I had here, AI, don't know that much. That picture of me in my description with me and my favorite dog, I mean, that's the extent of my AI usage is doing that. And even in then, you notice that my legs were cut off and stuff like that, but it's with AI stuff. I know how Studio Connect and MCP talks to FileMaker, but what they're planning on doing, how it actually works on their back ends, I don't really know that much about. And not really a UI expert, but it is kind of interesting. They brought me in, they asked me some questions about the new Smart Inspector that's in layout mode that's coming out and stuff like that. But I don't know why they asked me that, but you know, I can give opinions. Whether they listen to me or not, don't know.
B. Cooney, I think Barbara, I believe, watching us on Teams. This was back to the question about the table and field name comments coming through on OData, which, yay. Mm-hmm. Are those base table name or table occurrence name that would be coming through?
Everything coming through OData uses table occurrence names. So you really don't see base table names at all. And that's true for all the APIs. It's true for the XML API, the FileMaker Data API, and the OData, and actually even ODBC. We tend to only, base table names is kind of like this hidden thing behind FileMaker, and it's not something that comes out in the, for our public APIs, we're talking to FileMaker. Because it confuses, well, it's just our relational model is so different than, you know, most other models and stuff like that, where you just have one table name and then you have these larger queries and your joins and stuff like that, where we have table occurrences that have implied relationships between them. So that's one reason why we went to the table occurrence names. Though originally Christopher Quinn wanted to just call it, those were the table names, and then it would be base table names, we'd have the special name for the base table version of it, and it would just be tables. Not, he always hated it whenever anyone said table occurrence, but you know, it won. So. Much like sassy, like John Thatcher hated the word sassy also for, but when the community picks up a name and sticks with it, it's hard to change it. So.
And so this one was from Dennis Burnham back on in the, I think the full access topic. So he's run into a thing and he's just wondering if this makes sense to you. When he's logged in with full access and wants to examine something like a script trigger, he's getting a my access doesn't allow it, and he says it's caused by the existence of a defined login account that doesn't have full access. Does that make sense? Do you know if it's been fixed?
I mean, I remember seeing a bug coming in on that. I know some work. I know some work has come up on that area. There's a group of people in the Beijing team that did most of this access stuff that is working on that, and we've been feeding them all other issues like that. And this is so me and other people are working with them to figure out this stuff with the when you remove full access and all the oddities that happen at that point too. So it's definitely things we're looking at, and it's always hard for me to remember what revision or what version something went into, because there's so many different versions floating around. But I know I've seen that issue come up, and I think it's been worked on. So
good. Well, at least known issue, worked on, maybe coming soon.
Just the workaround that I found for that, Clay, is that if I temporarily grant full access to the auto login account, then I'm able to do what I need to do, and then I can go back and put that account back to its normal privilege set.
Yeah, there's some interesting problems with the auto login stuff, dealing with when you have multiple files being connected. If you don't actually use the same exact name and same path and stuff like that, sometimes you'll end up opening the same file as two different users at the same time, and then which one gets hooked up and you're actually using can cause issues like that, where it'll be, even though you thought this file was supposed to open this file, and the password was supposed to pass through, and you had the same account. But there's some ways you can go through if you have your external data or your data sources, and you have multiple names in there, and they're slightly different, or you open it up previously but it matches. You can run into stuff like that too.
Now I'm gonna, Heather, do you Remember your question?
I do.
All right, Heather.
Okay, so in talking about the aliases, this was not part of my original question, but since you brought it up, the table occurrences, are those what will have aliases then?
Actually, right now we don't have the aliases on the tables themselves. It's on the fields.
On the fields, okay.
We were talking about that, but it would probably be just on the table occurrences because that's what you see in most of the UI in FileMaker. You rarely see the base table names anywhere except for maybe the truncate script step. I
Right.
think that's the one special script step that deals with base tables instead of table occurrences.
Right.
Everything else, like in sort or field pickers and all that stuff, is all table occurrences. So
Okay. So
I don't think. This is where I know there's been work on it for doing the table occurrences, but I don't know if that's going to. Well, I guess I really shouldn't talk about FileMaker 2026 because things keep changing. So maybe it may actually be in the next
well,
release.
try not to ask you about any absolutes for
Yeah.
the future, but
But if it does show up in a future version, it's going to be table occurrences,
Okay.
not base tables.
okay, that's good to know.
That-
Good to think about.
I can be pretty
Future
definite
planning,
on,
Good,
yeah.
I like that. My original question that I was thinking of was about those, like, record IDs, table IDs, field IDs, internal. You also have layout IDs, script IDs. I don't know how we use those exactly. I mean, you can go to layout by layout number, layout name, etc. But particularly with the introduction a few versions back of perform script by name, and you can go to layout by name. But FileMaker doesn't currently require any uniqueness in your script or layout names. So this poses a problem sometimes, particularly, and it applies to me and our team here at Harmonic because we have multiple developers working in the same systems. And so when you start to accumulate layouts or accumulate scripts and they're tucked away inside various folders for different modules that different people have created, it is pretty easy to come up with scenarios where you have a duplicate script name or a duplicate layout name. Is that something that has, like, dealing with that or allowing some control for that or aliases for those, is that even on anyone's horizon?
I guess the thing is that now that other people have been seeing this immutable ID that's showing up in OData, they're kind of thinking about maybe doing that for any place that you can put a field name you could use. So like those other IDs that I showed, the immutable names.
Right.
So if you wanted to specify a field or a table or a script, or conceivably we could have FMF ID for or L ID for layouts or for other things. I mean, the math on this, you can see other people have come up with custom functions that show you how to generate these numbers and stuff like that. So and that would be very easy for us to actually do. Putting in the whole alias manager like we're doing with field names, the field name one is like you can define a calculation to determine what the name is. And I don't know, that's a little bit overboard for some of this other stuff.
It would be
Because it's not, these aren't really UI facing, these are more developer issues that you're dealing with here. So as long as if you'd be fine being able to specify it that way, that could actually be done pretty easily.
So one of the issues with the perform script by name and go to layout by name is that because you're putting that value in text, there's no validation of that in the calc engine that's happening. At the very least, it would be really great if for those kinds of steps that
I would actually try it first before you save it to say
that
whether
it would like underline it or highlight it or give you some warning and perhaps the opportunity to say, of these, which one did you mean?
Right. Well, at that point, then it would actually have to probably turn it into this format then.
No.
It should be nice.
Because if you do have that pick, then why are you using by name? You should just use pick the actual
Right,
play.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the other form is doing. The other form where you don't pass in the name, you actually pick it. That's what it's storing is basically these numbers internally in there.
So, I mean, I love the being able to perform script by name because you can do your forking with one perform script step instead of umpteen variations and such. And also with the layout, if I've got a primary table name and then a dash and list.
Yeah.
It's real easy to do those with the, by name
Right.
option. But it occasionally comes up in a multi-developer
Right.
environment, as I said, particularly that duplicate names
Yeah.
get applied to these things, and that can be problematic.
Yeah, I don't know whether do like FM perception or those other tools with the XML scanners. Do they come up with warnings if you have like scripts with the multiple, that have the same name and stuff
Not
like that?
that I have seen.
Okay.
I use Monkey Bread software lists all the IDs, and my easy thing is when it doesn't list an ID, it's because there's a duplicate. So that's
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you may want to talk to those guys with those tools too to add something like that in there. But I just send an email, or I forget where requests come in now or something like that. But send in. I could see us
Post your
doing some
feature
type of
requests.
checking I could see us doing some type of pre-flighting while you're still in the script maker.
Yeah, so
and say-
like if you.
All right,
leave
I'm
out
gonna
something-
move on.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you, Heather.
Yeah.
Speaking of XML syntax, though,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't hear anything about that today because it wasn't in the release. That's what you were
Right.
talking about. But I know you gave us a bit of an update at this past Engage that you had kind of reopened the work on the patch tool, the XML syntax, and so forth. Can you give us any update on that? How that's going? Is that
Well,
still
that's
active?
slated for the FileMaker 2026 release. Actually, now that we've had more time to work, because originally we were talking about that a lot of this work was going to come out before Christmas. Now that we've had more time, we're getting further along on some of this XML stuff, and I think the patcher tool is actually working pretty good now, where you give it two databases and say generate a patch file for it, and you can now we're successfully recreating entire files from XML, so you can do the save as XML and then say run it through the upgrade tool and it'll recreate a file. So it's just a single target. You just pass the XML file saying here create this. So that's working now. So there's more work going on, and it's probably going to go a little bit further than what I talked about in the last Engage, now that we've had more time to work on it.
That is super exciting news. Yay.
Yeah.
Any comment you can make on version control and how, maybe from your perspective, how we're going to be able to leverage that for version control?
I don't know. I mean, like Devin has, he has his whole idea of how to do it.
Yeah, and we have our ideas.
Yeah, you have your ideas too.
But I mean,
But
the core issue
for
being
us-
just the size of that XML syntax, right?
Right.
And if we want to put it in
Yeah.
Git and so forth,
I mean, the other thing is that now you have more control over the subsections of XML. You don't necessarily you do save and you have to get everything all the time. If you just want layouts, you can ask for that.
Yeah.
I forget how far down whether we can just do it. I think you can do a specific layout even if you want. So how to manage that? And I've been, I guess this is emails I've been going back and forth of. People want to. It's kind of an odd line of how we're doing it, because you right now what the last person that modified it, the mod ID, the date it was modified, but now we're getting requests. Well, can't you save like the last 5 people that changed or more and stuff like that? So that means the XML is going to just keep getting larger and larger. But this is stuff that is usually kept in the Git repository itself that has other databases keeping track of these lines were changed by this people and that stuff. Our XML is kind of, we do everything a little bit differently than everyone else at FileMaker, but we're putting that in the XML in those actual objects of the last person that changed it. And they're asking, well, can we, when you make the save, can you store can you enter a field and store a comment why this was changed? But at that point, you're talking about that's what Git does.
Yeah, you're turning it into
I don't know whether we want to go through and
repository.
actually, have our own Git implementation or our own full implementation there. So, I guess we'd be more interested in recommendations of what to change in the XML to make this easier for other people to do this at this point.
Yeah, good. Is there a kitchen on that started? Do you see that something maybe after 26? What's the timing on that?
Well, hopefully we'll come out with it, like I mentioned about the blog for the access privileges stuff. There's people working on a specific blog on how to use the upgrade tool and
Yeah.
kind of at least best practices from our point of view of
Yeah.
how to use that.
I know it's not everybody obviously, but there's a lot of us that live in a world where we do rigid multi-stack development and certainly have ideas. So I think
Right.
there's people who would be interested in contributing.
I know Vince seems to be sending an email to us every week, so we get a lot of requests now. Some of the stuff he's saying, he's saying no, we're not going to do that. But there's other points. He really wants deep linking in there so that you can go from a certain piece of XML and then have the UI bring you to that point right away. And,
Yeah.
Open quickly, that new feature that came in there, that is actually kind of the start of deep linking.
Yep.
It's not as far as he wants it to go, but it's at least a start of going down that path.
Yeah. Back to webhooks, and we've enjoyed watching John Renfrew's exploration of the topic. We ourselves kind of sniffed what you guys were doing between FileMaker and Studio and started standing up webhooks, and we're using it between FileMaker and MySQL with Kafka as as our communication layer in between. Are you saying, just want to clarify, get you on the record maybe, hopefully, are you saying that, now that it's in this release, 2204, and we've got these webhook calls published, you're seeing it as potentially ready to use in production, where, I could deploy my webhook solution with a client and you'll try not to change them. I mean, I know sometimes we have to change things, but...
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure we're happy with all the endpoints and the items in it. Now that more people have been using it, we have been getting bug reports.
Yep.
So there are things we're fixing in it that'll be fixed in the FileMaker 2026. But I don't see anything that we're planning on changing. Anything that currently works that we've publicized there's no plans to change any of that stuff.
Good.
Now, as I mentioned, they're going to probably be adding more things for these new AI hooks and the scripts and stuff like that. But that's not the webhook. Now, the webhook stuff is, well, I guess one thing. So where I mentioned that we return -1 if the table has been truncated, I believe that's only in 2026. That's not there yet right now.
Okay.
But that was kind of more of a bug fix. Is you get no message when someone say, hey, you do truncate table, and you get no webhook coming back from it. And,
Yep.
so that has been fixed for the next release on it. So I think it would be safe to start doing development on it, and anything that you have will continue working except for bugs that you run into.
Right.
So maybe not deployment quite yet, or, well, depends what you're running into. I mean, if you don't run into these edge conditions that we're fixing bugs on, then it'll probably work perfectly fine for you.
Any sense of scale? Would you say, for instance, with Studio, they said, well, it works up to the first X thousand records. I think it's up to, is it 250,000 records or something like that was what it was. Is there any kind of limits you would place on it from an architecture standpoint?
Well, that's Studio internal limitations. That's not the OData limitation.
Not on the webhook side.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a problem with Studio right now is that since the earlier versions of OData were not persisting the webhooks when you quit it and started back up again, so they would do a get all to see if their webhook still existed,
Yep.
and then they would add a new one. But they've had a bug in their logic for quite a while now, is that sometimes it'll do the get, see it's there, but then create the webhook anyway. So we're running into people with that have been using Studio that will have like 8,000 webhooks, which actually causes more grief internally because we don't know why, and they all have different header entries in it, so they're not identical ones. slightly different ones, because every time they create a new webhook, they create a different ID for that webhook for some reason. I don't know why they're doing it, but so you end up with these OData instances that one record changes and then it goes through and sends out 8,000 webhooks for that one change. So there's been some issues with that, which supposedly they fixed last week.
Yeah.
Finally.
Good
but
news.
It's some type of timing issue where they did the get is running on a different process than where the creator is, and it's a timing issue. Because on my server that I was running over Christmas, sometimes I'd get like 3 webhooks like within 10 minutes, and then other times it would be like half a day before a new webhook showed up. So it wasn't some type of timing thing occurring on their end. But
I think where we ran into trouble with our testing, again, prior to you guys releasing this officially as a feature, but it was if we would edit a very large number of records very rapidly, so big table, like a replace function, something like that, right? And you're queuing up tens of thousands of calls effectively.
Yeah.
And we would find that we froze our connection to Kafka and MySQL. And so we're like, well, is this specific to our implementation? We tried the same thing with Studio, did the same thing. Just froze up server and its ability to handle it.
I think we had fixed most of that stuff by the time this release came out here. There's some interesting problems with he's using Yellow, I think it's the name of the regular language processor. And it has this limitation when we're creating these statements for all these records that have changed to generate the request coming back. It would blow things out. And I've been going through and making it so I make sure that we don't run out of the internal processor stack space and stuff like that. So there were some limits in there running. And then it was taking each chunk, it was only sending out with like a 3-second delay between each one, and you'd fall so far behind on a replace. But it should be sending things out a lot faster now and not building up in memory waiting to get it out. So we did, and I think that's it. Well, that's the problem is, so what version did this actually get fixed in? So,
right, sure.
But I know we've been working on that quite a bit to make sure that keeps up.
Do you need for this, for any of what you've been talking about, do we need that on-prem connector? Studio, I think it was originally built with Claris Connect to allow connection inbound to an on-prem server. Am I using the right term here? Helping anybody?
The
on-prem
agent.
agent.
Oh, the on-prem agent. No, that really shouldn't be. Well, as long as the OData source is available through the external network, and you're not filtering it, you shouldn't need that special connector that Connect had.
Yeah.
Because it was using the data API, which was not really as truly RESTful as. I mean, you had to get a token for a particular instance, and that was causing other issues. The nice thing about OData, it is each request is like a specific standalone request and doesn't require any state information being kept behind. Now the webhooks is something different. There is state information being stored in the server backend, but the request to it, the agent was needed to do the notifications coming out through the data API, I think. But from my understanding is that the Claris Connect has rewritten all their connectors to FileMaker to use the OData stuff and trying to get off the FileMaker data API, so they don't need the agent anymore.
That is excellent news, because we don't have a Linux version of the agent. And,
right.
That's a deployment challenge for at least some of my customers.
Right. Yeah, you should check out the new Claris Connect FileMaker thing. I believe. I keep forgetting how it's packaged. I don't know. I think I don't know if it has a different name or it's the same name, or I don't know how they swapped it out. But you'd have to talk to them. But they've rewritten it to use all the newer OData updates and changes that are there.
So from Teams, on the topic of webhooks, is it viable to use for an audit log?
Yeah, you can use it. Now, I guess one thing with so how the webhook works is that the OData processor gets the request from server saying this record changed, and then they'll go through and then they'll do a query to get all the stuff that that you request, what your filter and all that stuff. Now, if you're really pounding it away and you have a bunch of ads coming in at the same time, you may only get like you won't get a individual webhook for each change that occurred during a certain time period.
Yep.
As it builds up. So it depends on your requirements for your transaction logs, whether you actually need to know every individual commit going on. Now, FileMaker has, when you're just using the UI, clicking in and out, I mean, you're doing commits all the time.
Yep.
So, do you really, is that really what you want to log? Is every time someone clicked into a field, made a change, clicked out, and then clicked back in the same field and make, when the commit point in FileMaker has always been nebulous, I guess.
Yep.
It's not as clear as it is in other databases. So when you're doing transaction logs like this, and even with how our progressive backups and the team's been working on, trying to do, making sure that we only do backups on points that are in like between transactions and stuff like that. But trying to determine when a transaction is done, when you have a user interface that's just going in and out very quickly, is kind of tough to tell. So as long as you don't need absolute transaction boundaries, it should work fine.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer. Tony White. This is a feature request question, but I would ask you to pivot it from a standpoint of, thoughts, direction, something along that lines. I think it's a good one. Copy paste privilege sets, as you can do with scripts, script steps, tables, et cetera, et cetera. Some are simple, they're context free. Some are quite complicated with detailed custom privileges and so forth, and it can take a lot of effort to move some of those settings around. Now, of course, me talking out loud here, there may be a real disconnect between one table and another, and so any thoughts about how maybe we could enhance the ability to maintain and move privilege set settings? There's a lot of
from one table to another table?
Yeah, I think that's the gist of the question. Yeah,
that's really tables are so different between.
Yeah.
How do you? So if you have a field name primary key, it'd be pretty easy to match that up.
But is he talking about copying whole privilege sets or just?
Yeah, I think bringing a privilege set from one file to another one.
Not fully clear in the nature of the question, but yeah.
It's. That. For any of you on the ETS, you've been seeing a kind of a preview of a new way to view privileges, which tries to give you a more holistic, or an overview of all the multiple files and how they relate. And for the people that have been playing around with that, it's really just a read-only view of it right now. We haven't gotten into editing because you run into, moving things between files here at this point. So. I don't know if we're going to punt on that completely or not when we get to the modification version of those new UIs. Kind of going, always saying, well, with the upgrade tool, you can, maybe someone can read the XML of the privilege set, analyze the other table and, recreate the privilege set using, the information of the, do a comparison between the two tables and then determine, what to do to bring that privilege set and then insert that privilege set in that other file.
Yeah.
It's real convenient if they work similar to themes.
It's a thought. Yeah.
Themes
All
and
right.
styles where you can.
Yeah, with overrides. Well, then you get into the people want nested privilege sets. Saying that, saying give the most.
I wasn't even going to go there.
Yeah, but that's what I keep thinking. Well, when you start, with style sheets, you have a nesting of, different properties going down.
Sure.
And you override specific ones.
Yep.
And that's what I see when thinking about what people want with the privilege sets. But I've been trying to avoid doing that for the longest time because trying to figure that out.
It'd be great.
And if you go back to, Draco, I mean, that privilege set, you could do layering like that with multiple sets and stuff like that. And the UI and trying to figure out what you were actually doing and modify it, I mean, that was like the number one complaint of how, quote, privilege sets were done prior to the 7.0 release.
Yeah.
So we basically said, nope, we're not going to do that. And it'd be nice and simple. You look at it, you know what you're going to get. But yeah, no, the higher, I know that pops up, but I wouldn't, I can't see in it. I'll probably retire before that gets done. But yeah, no, moving the privilege sets from one table to the other, I mean, that and how to apply them between the two, because when they were doing the kitchens and the work groups trying to figure out what the new UI for the privilege set managing, or seeing more tables and how to move things and how to see what things are the same. Some people have been coming up with different ideas of maybe what to do there. I'm not quite sure what the current status of that is.
We have one more from YouTube. Made Sussman suggests they have a Windows-based AWS server. It works well in general. Best config, lots of CPUs, plenty of RAM, 64 gigs of RAM. They hit a cap on API connections. And I think we've all, I bring this one up because I think we've all experienced, sometimes we throw a lot of hardware at something and then we seem to run into what feels like an artificial kind of performance limitation. Any kind of thoughts about that? And I would take it a little further than her question and say, any comments on, OData versus Data API and so forth?
The FileMaker Data API ends up creating a complete new session for every token that's running there. So you can start burning up a lot of memory and items that way. OData basically creates cached sessions that if the same user with the same permissions keep coming in, it'll just reuse that last session, and it kind of times out after a certain amount of time, and there's some scavenging stuff so it doesn't have to recreate a new session every time a new request comes in. So that's what's kind of going on in the background on the OData stuff. So it should be able to handle stuff like that better. I'm surprised they're running into problems with the Windows server. On the Mac and like the Unix things, you sometimes run into problems with the number of ports or for mock messages or IDs and stuff like that that are baked into the kernel, and then with all the FileMaker files and all the temp files, and then sometimes in the different Unixes, all the IDs are, whether it's file or network IDs or whatever, are all bundled in the same range that has a fixed size, which you have to you make some kernel changes to it and then restart the process to get, to increase those numbers. But Windows, I've never really ran into that with the networking side of things. You run into that, and there's other fixed limits inside Windows that you run into in the rendering side of areas. Yeah, I'm surprised. I know there was some bug that came in, someone saying after a certain number they were running into it, but then we found out they were all running, all these connections that were coming in were running server-side script steps, and they were running into the limit of the number of simultaneous server-side scripts you can run at the same one time. So we found out that that wasn't really one of these connection issues like that. It was the number of scripts you were running and trying to figure out what we would want to do that. Do we just queue those up instead? Because you don't however many you want. But yeah, for this particular one, I'm not quite sure.
All right, it's good feedback though, and we've certainly experienced a lot better capacity with OData in a variety of ways. Mike?
What will you do to make colorblind color sets? It is nearly impossible to colorblind person to pick colors in FileMaker, and I need a colorblind theme. I need colorblind color sets.
Because right now the one that he uses looks like an angry fruit salad.
Yeah.
It's really impossible. The way it works, I can't tell one color from another.
We're getting a lot of pressure on accessibility issues right now because the government, the U.S. government, is coming out with some more strict requirements coming out later this year. So there is a lot of accessibility, voiceover, color, and that stuff that's being looked at right now. I don't remember the color stuff coming up as a big issue right now, but Yeah, make sure you send me a request right now, because right now the whole exec staff is all, that's their hot topic for the current month, is accessibility and getting, yeah.
It's not only FileMaker, I mean, it's pretty much. When I go on online forums, you make a mistake, I have to call my wife over. I can't see
Right.
a red color, I don't see it.
Yeah.
So if there's an error, I need color sets, and we should be able to pick a colorblind color set
Right.
so we could see things.
That doesn't come up in the pickers.
You can't,
The system picker. Does the Mac OS system picker have an
Oh,
option
don't
for
even-
color?
don't go there.
Oh, don't go there.
Oh, we tried, and you don't want to know what that phone call was like.
Oh, oh, okay.
It was him screaming, "That button's not there. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is." And then here's why. Chrissy's colorblind. Ah, shoot. It was there. He couldn't see it.
Oh,
We've tried every different color set from Apple. We've tried everything on the Windows side, grayscale, you name it.
The
It's just-
grayscale one, actually, we actually, last week, Steve programmed something in the grayscale one. And I said, well, how are you supposed to scroll this? And he said, there's a scroll bar. I said, where?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's just the different variants. He has a hard time seeing.
One thing that I just want to ask you to take us out on, Draco has been around for a long time. How, maybe give us your thoughts on Draco in 2026, Draco in the era of AI. How are you feeling about Draco?
I'm amazed it's still holding up pretty well. Now, with these things like doing this backup stuff and the standby server stuff that you may have been hearing some rumors about, and so there's a lot of lower level changes going on, the block management and how things are moved around underneath there. So there's a lot of changes occurring there. But the actual relational model, that's pretty much stuck in stone the way it is right now. I mean, maybe 15 years ago we were, looking, we were writing up papers and deciding, okay, now that the join graph's been out there for this amount of time, what can be done to fix all that? But there's really not much work going on in that area anymore. So pretty much the model is pretty much stuck the way it is right now, for like the context-basedness of our script steps and the model, the relational model. There's a bunch of different performance improvements being done and stuff like that. The different caching stuff, like the work that was done to make the JSON faster, and how data is transferred around internally is being changed. But the Draco model of how things are working, I don't see that. I guess the goal was when Studio first came out, they were saying, well, okay, we can't keep tweaking the Draco model because there are so many different problems that we need to start from scratch again. And unfortunately, I guess the Studio concept didn't work out too well. So I don't know if there will be another big thing of do we get rid of table occurrences? We don't want that anymore, or something like that. So one thing, we are doing more work on value lists to maybe help give some more options on value lists, so you don't have to make all these stupid table occurrences just to do that stuff. So I guess we are working on other places where there's stopping stupid table occurrences from being created just for a UI element. Ideally, your table occurrence should just really be about your data and how it's all related with each other. And if anything, hopefully we'll start pulling off things that you put in the join graph just for UI purposes, because you want to do a trick with a value list or a trick with a portal or something like that. I can see those style changes, but the actual deep model of pessimistic locking, the whole relational model, and how queries and that stuff is done, I really don't see that changing much more. But we are doing other improvements for backups and performance, and being able to give you different UI mechanisms so you don't have to use some of the outer parts of Draco to do things.
So Draco fights them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you, Clay.
Yeah.
It's been great to have you here. Thank you, everyone, for joining remote and local.
And I guess there's a survey that you should fill out
There
too.
is a
There's
survey. Yes, thank you.
The QR code that I know you told me to say push that. So
Follow the survey. Listen to Clay. Follow the survey. Fill out the survey. All right. Thanks so much.